What's up, Unleashed Humans? If you listen to this podcast regularly, it's most likely because you want to be better at everything in your life. Things like better sleep, better memory, better relationships, better sex, better workouts, better nutrition, and better overall health. This is because you don't settle for average. You want to be more, and you want to show it off to your friends and family. And I get it, because you totally should. I implore you to be a health leader in your community, to be the Wolfpack King, if you will. If you look to become a person who exudes health and inspires others to become a superhuman every single day, then I have just the thing for you. And that special something is a free copy of my book, The Unleashed Human. You can get your free copy of The Unleashed Human by going to www.theunleashedhuman.com/unleashed. That is, again, www.theunleashedhuman.com/unleashed to get a free copy of the Unleashed Human book in order to take your life to a whole nother level. Now, on today's episode, I interview Dr. Terry Wahls, who is making a massive impact in the world of Western medicine today. She is harnessing the power of nutrition to reverse neurodegenerative diseases, autoimmune diseases, and even taking people who are already healthy and making them into superhumans without drugs and harmful procedures. We talk about how the Wahls protocol helps with autoimmune and neurodegenerative diseases. We talk about electromuscle stimulation for the nervous system. We talk about how great vibration platforms are and neuromuscular re-education for balance, proprioception, and coordination. We also talk about why organ meats are a must and why most people miss out on these. We talk about how sulfur and color-rich vegetables are so important for your health and why you should be eating them. And we also talk about why your poop matters for your health and that you should be looking down at your poop in the toilet bowl every single day. Now, if there was ever an episode for you to listen to, this is the one you do not want to miss. Now, one last thing before we start the episode, I want to give a shout out to my amazing sponsor, HiVita. Now, as you know, I've mentioned on previous episodes on how amazing molecular hydrogen water is for your brain. Over 400 published medical studies support ingestion of molecular hydrogen to be a powerful antioxidant that improves circulation, athletic performance and recovery, metabolism, and cognitive function. Now, if you're looking to take your brain performance and happiness to a whole nother level, I totally recommend checking out HiVita Hydrogen Water, as it is the first and only hydrogen-infused sparkling water in the world. That's HiVita, spelled HYVIDA, available in 3 flavors: pure, raspberry, or lemon lime. Now, for Unleashed Human listeners, you can get 10% off your purchase of HiVita by going to Amazon.com and at checkout on Amazon, type in the promo code UNLEASHED. Again, to receive an extra 10% off, use the promo code UNLEASHED on Amazon.com to kick your brain, body, and health into high gear. Now, without further ado, let's start the show with my amazing guest, Dr. Terry Wahls. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Unleashed Human podcast with your host, Dr. TJ Woodham. Now, I'm super honored to have on today's guest. I've been following her for some time, even since 2013, 2014. She is a clinical professor of medicine at the University of Iowa, where she teaches internal medicine residents, sees patients in traumatic brain injury clinics, and conducts clinical trials. She has been on the TEDx stage and has seen over 3.1 million views on her YouTube video for her talk on minding your mitochondria. Now, she's also a patient with chronic progressive neurological disorder, multiple sclerosis, secondary progressive, that is, which confined her to a tilt-recline wheelchair for 4 years. But thanks to the power of the Wahls protocol, which is based on functional medicine, the Wahls paleo diet. Dr. Wahls restored her health and now pedals her bike 5 miles to work every day. It's a phenomenal feat. Now, she's the author of the Wahls Protocol, How I Beat My Progressive MS During Paleo or Using Paleo Principles in Functional Medicine, and Minding My Mitochondria, How I Overcame Secondary Progressive Multiple Sclerosis. And she also teaches the public and medical community about healing, the healing power of nutrition. Now, of course, as I said, I'm talking about Dr. Terry Wahls. Dr. Wahls, thank you so much for being on the show. We're going to have a blast today.
Oh, thank you for having me. Very glad to be here.
So you've probably told your story like 100 million times at this point, right? But I know that some of my listeners have probably never heard of you, just
Sure.
like, you know, any show that you go on. But can you kind of give them an overview of where you were? I knew you were an athlete. You've done a whole bunch of different sports. Like, I mean, you were even climbing like mountains and that kind of
Yeah.
thing. And so go ahead and start from there.
I before medical school, was into athletics. I did taekwondo, competed nationally in full contact free sparring taekwondo. And in those days, there was no protective gear, so it was sort of a brutal sport, but it was exhilarating. It was fun. And in 1978, I was third in the country in women's welterweight.
It's amazing.
And then I thought, when I entered medical school, I thought, God, I have to stop doing this because people get 2 points for kicking you in the head.
Oh,
so
that's great.
So I quit doing that type of competition. I still stayed in taekwondo, did teaching. I had a great time, finished residency. I went into practice, and then was still doing well. Had kids. Shifted to skiing, biking, swimming, and then in 2000, just as I was relocating to the University of Iowa in Iowa City, VA, I started having some difficulty with my left leg. I had a big evaluation, and including MRI of my brain, my spinal cord, spinal tap, a slew of other tests. And I was found to have lesions in my spinal cord, abnormal spinal fluid. Then my physician said, you forgot to mention that 13 years ago you had an episode of dim vision in your left eye. Like, oh yeah, that is right. So it said that was probably optic neuritis, and what you're having now is your next episode. So this is relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis. They recommended I start on disease-modifying drugs, and of course, being a academic internal medicine doc, I knew I wanted to treat my disease aggressively. So of course, I took the disease-modifying drugs. And I wanted to see the best people in the country, so I did some research and decided that was Cleveland Clinic. And so I saw one of their best people, took the newest drugs, and steadily went downhill. 2 years later, they told me about the work of Ashton Embry and Lauren Cordain. And so I read his papers, got his book, and ultimately decided, after 20 years of being a vegetarian, to go back to eating meat. I continued to decline. The next year I needed a tilt recline wheelchair. I started taking mitoxantrone, which is a form of chemotherapy. I continued to decline. Then I took Tysabri, which is the new biologic drug, and continued to decline. Then I switched to Cellcept. And by then I'm sort of realizing that the best conventional medicine is probably not going to stop my slide into a bedridden, quite possibly demented life. And another part of my MS is trigeminal neuralgia, or these electrical face pains that would come on episodically. And that, of course, was getting to be more frequent, more severe, more difficult to control. So I was realizing that pain may well be a big problem. And so at that point, I went back to reading the science and would ultimately start experimenting based on what I was reading. And I would eventually start using vitamins and supplements to support my mitochondria, because I was observing that in the animal models for other forms of neurodegeneration, mitochondria were the linchpin. And even though no one was writing about that yet for MS, I thought, well, it's probably the same. So I created these vitamin supplement cocktails for my mitochondria, And after 6 months, I decided, shucks, it's not helping. You quit wasting your money. And so I stopped everything and couldn't get out of bed. 3 days later, I still couldn't really function. My wife came in and said, honey, I think I ought to take these again. So I took them, and the next day I could get up and go to work. And I thought, wow, that was really interesting. So 2 weeks later, I did the same thing, stopped everything, was again even more exhausted, couldn't function. And on the third day, I resumed everything and could get up the following day. So now I'm very excited that I'm figuring stuff out that my neurologist and my primary care doc had not told me about.
Right.
So I'm much more excited about spending time reading the literature. I'm volunteering to be on the Institutional Review Board and to read the psychiatric and neurologic human clinical trials. So I'm getting more and more comfortable reading the literature and thinking more biochemically about what's going on. And so I gradually add more supplements. The speed of my decline slows. I still have severe fatigue. I can't sit up. I can walk very short distances using 2 walking sticks. By the summer of 2007, I can't sit up in a regular chair. I have a special zero gravity chair that tilts back so my knees are higher than my nose. I'm beginning to have, brain fog. My pain is getting to be more difficult to control. My chief of staff, and I think reasonably does this. He tells me he's going to send me to the traumatic brain injury clinic come January. I'll see patients with the psychologist, psychiatrist, a phys med doc, the speech pathologist. There'll be no residents. And my wife and I talk about that. He goes, that's a job you can't do. You're not strong enough. And I'm like, and I knew that was probably the case. It's like, well, come January, I'll go to that clinic and either I can do the job or I can't, and then I'll have to finally apply for medical disability. God works in mysterious ways because the following, I think it was about 2 weeks later, I am reviewing the IRB protocol that introduces me to electrical stimulation of muscles in a group of paralyzed vets. And so after reading that study, I read the 212 other papers that are in PubMed about eSTEM, and I convinced my physical therapist to let me have a trial. And it's painful, but also exhilarating because now with electricity, I can work out for about 10 minutes, and I'm not quite as exhausted as it was when I was doing my usual tiny little workout. So I go to clinic 3 times a week. I'm doing my eSTEM. It gets me a home device. I'm doing that. And at the same time period, I discovered the Institute for Functional Medicine. I ordered their course on neuroprotection. I slogged through that, which was a challenge because I was having some brain fog.
Right.
Have a longer list of supplements, a little deeper understanding. And then I have, about a month later, another really big aha moment. And that is like, what if I redesign my paleo diet based on all the supplements that I was using, based on what I learned from my own research and from functional medicine? If I could figure out what foods were really rich in all these nutrients.
Right.
So that was more research, but I sort of got that worked out. And so December 26th, 2007, I sent Jackie, to the grocery store with a new list, and we had this new menu and a new way of eating. Then a couple weeks later, I'm going off to the traumatic brain injury clinic. The first week, I'm just watching what's going on. So I expected I should be able to watch. That shouldn't be any problem. So then the next week, I start seeing the patients. And at the end of the week, I'm thinking like, that wasn't too bad.
Something's working here.
I could stand up, do the exams. I'd sit back down on my scooter. And then after the second week of seeing the patients, I'm like, I think my energy is definitely better. I'm beginning to feel stronger. And
it's like food works or something.
It's like, it was so startling.
Right.
And at 3 months, I get up and I'm walking with a cane in the hospital, stunning everyone. And at 6 months, I'm walking without a cane, still with a limp, but I'm walking without a cane. At 9 months, I get on my bike and I bike around the block the first time in 6 years.
Nice.
My kids are crying, my wife's crying, I'm crying. And that's really when I'm understanding that the conventional understanding of progressive MS is wrong, because there's only one way you go when you have progressive MS, that's downhill.
Right.
And it's like, I wonder just how much recovery might be possible. So by then, I've certainly changed the way I practice. I'm spending a lot more time talking about food and diet and lifestyle with my patients. And in my traumatic brain injury clinic, my partners who had just been saying, well, there's nothing we can do, you'll recover or not, I'm coming in and saying, no, there's a lot we can do. We're going to teach you how to use diet and lifestyle. And we're beginning to see that the people I see in the traumatic brain injury clinic are doing remarkably better.
That's really cool.
And so that, launches me into a new way of my primary care practice, a new way in the traumatic brain injury clinic. And of course, it would ultimately shift the type of research that I was doing. And now I'm doing clinical trials, testing these things, and I'm going around the world teaching people how to use diet and lifestyle.
Now, from all of that you just said, I have so many questions that I'm going to pull out of that. But first, I'm sure that you had a lot of backlash, a lot of haters that they said, no, there's no way you could do that with nutrition. And I'm sure that when you're walking around, people are like, they're, scratching their head. How is Dr. Wahls doing this? How is Terry pulling this off? She's got to be
so
doing
people
something.
were thrilled to see me walking. That was very cool. They all thought it was because I was now magically on Tysabri.
Right.
So they have to explain that, no, I'm not. I'm on no drugs, no disease-modifying drugs. This is all food and lifestyle. And then the next thing that's really interesting. So I've changed to how I'm practicing. I'm focused more and more on food, less and less on drugs. Right. And my colleagues start complaining.
Oh, okay.
So my chief of staff calls me up, and I have to go in and explain what's going on, why people are upset. The MS Society bans me as a speaker for creating false hope, so I have to go back again and explain that. In both my meetings with the chair of medicine and with the chief of staff at the VA, I have to roll in my big stack of all the scientific papers that would explain what I was doing and why, to explain that this is science-based. And in the end, both my chief of medicine and the chief of the VA became huge supporters. The chief of medicine gave me the job, said, this is so important, Terry. Your clinical assignment for next year is to get a case report written up. Work with your treating medical team and get this written up.
Nice.
So we did that. And then he called me back in when I submitted it. So, okay, now the next job is we're going to do a safety and feasibility study. I'm like, but that's not the research that I do. And he goes, I'll get you the mentors. This is important research. And so
basically those are the studies to make sure no one gets hurt, almost, kind of thing.
Correct. So it's a single arm study. You do the intervention, very small numbers to show people can do it. This is a complicated regimen. And the reason I was able to do that is I was on the IRB. So the IRB had seen my severe disability and my recovery. And so they approved the study. And actually, it took a lot of work to get it approved, because it was so complicated, because I had supplements, because I had diet, because I had stress reduction, I had exercise, e-stim.
Right.
And we had to make it clear that we're just testing, can people implement all of this? And are there any adverse events? And we will incidentally measure clinical outcomes. And so the big adverse event was that if you're overweight, you lost weight. Yeah. So I had to file safety reports every 3 months for the 3 years that I was doing that study, because if you're overweight, you lost weight.
Right.
And people who are ideal weight were able to keep their weight within the appropriate range.
Right.
And so the people largely were able to implement and were remarkably successful in changing their diet, doing the exercise and the e-stim. And then the remarkable improvement in quality of life, reduction in fatigue severity, was clinically really strikingly large. So clinically very significant and statistically significant with the p-value of 0.0008. So, and even we were surprised.
Wow.
That it was so striking.
It's amazing.
It was very cool.
So Terry, so I know that from a physician myself, I actually have used your protocol even on people with POTS, and I've seen really, really good results with people with POTS. And I know that you've probably seen the same in other conditions and that kind of thing. And I know that the Wahls protocol can almost help anybody, even if you don't have any, chronic disease or progressive disease. This is basically for anyone, right? To live a better life, right? You have to be alive. Yeah.
That's the key thing. You have to be alive. And for people who are well, this makes it more likely that you'll be alive and thriving into your 70s, 80s, 90s, and 100.
Absolutely.
We all want to have our brain in optimal shape. I mean, I want to be playing chess and Scrabble with my great-grands when I'm 90 and 100.
How old do you want to be, Terry?
Well, I plan on going to 120 because
I like it.
I want to see what happens to my kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
They've got interesting lives. I want to be around and be able to enjoy that whole journey.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. A lot of people, they want to live to be old, but you want to live to be old and healthy, right?
Old and healthy. I'm much more interested in health span than lifespan.
Okay. Yeah. No, I know a lot of people, they're trying to just take their life, to a whole nother level, but it's like, well, you need to slow down and see what really works for you, because sometimes I think people try to take that boundary to another level where they're actually stressing their body,
Yes.
So I think there needs to be a medium, obviously, but I think the things that you're showing the protocol, because it's not just the diet. I know you talk about toxins and stress as well. So Terry, can you kind of jump into the protocol? Like,
Sure.
most of it's, kind of like a, diet kind of thing, but let's kind of give like an overview of what it is.
So we have a very intensive diet that I've really worked on designing specifically for your brain. And I've written it level 1, level 2, and level 3, so that people can sort of ease into, because just going gluten-free, dairy-free, lots of vegetables is a pretty big change for most
Well, just taking out
Americans.
carbs and dairy is a lot for somebody.
That's a big ask.
Right.
And then at the next level, we start talking about fermented foods, organ meats, seaweed. And then at the next level, I talk about the benefits of a ketogenic diet.
Nice.
And then, I also talked a bit about what we call the elimination diet, where we take out nightshades and all legumes and go on more of a low lectin diet.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
So that's the dietary principles. In addition, then there's the other environmental and lifestyle factors, trying to get the toxic load in your body reduced as well as you can. Exercise. If we aren't using our body, it's going to be replaced with fat or disappear.
Yeah.
So talk about exercise. I talk about rehabilitation. And with that, we spend a fair amount of time talking about electrical stimulation of muscles.
Nice.
As part of that rehab program. And we talk about meaning, purpose, connection, because in order to go on this journey of changing my diet and working step by step through all these other environmental factors, it's very helpful to know, why do I want to do this?
Right.
What is the meaning? What is the purpose? What are my connections? That's a few people can just do it on their own. But we're much more successful if we're doing it together as a family with some other people that are important in our lives.
I totally agree with that. And I'm really glad you brought that up, Terry, because I know, for instance, when anyone's trying to change their diet lifestyle, or, even in our office, when they're going through a corrective care phase, when they're actually going through conservative chiropractic care, trying to change their spine and their nerve conduction velocity and that kind of thing, they have to have their whole family on board, because they need to know what their spouse or their loved ones are doing. Also, I'm glad you brought that up, because we know that the societies and the populations that live the longest in the blue zones, they have high levels of community.
Yes.
They do everything together. That's why they're happy. That's why they live into old age the way that they do, in a healthy way, right? So I'm really glad you brought that up, because I think that's a big thing we miss out on.
Correct. And some people used to say the pockets of centenarians have to do with their genes. No. It has to do with their environment. We
Right.
all have those great genes. And as soon as those pockets adopt their traditional lifestyles and adopt a westernized sedentary lifestyle full of sugar and carbs,
Right.
they develop the diseases of chronic disease that all of us are developing as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, and before we jump in, because I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions regarding organ meats, because I've been down
They're
that road.
delicious.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you questions there. But first, before I forget, I want to ask you about electrical muscle stimulation, because most people, when they think about that, they think about it as like a TINS unit, or it's just used for pain, when it's much
Yeah.
more than that, right? So can you kind of
So
touch on that?
yeah, so it is used for pain.
Right.
And that was probably its original use, was to help people modulate pain. But now, in addition, the earliest use for e-stim was to help provide current to the motor nerves of the muscle and help the muscle contract. And we can use that after people have had a acute orthopedic type injury to maintain muscle mass while the person is recovering, or to grow muscles more quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a legal way athletes can use to increase muscle size, mass, speed, and endurance that does not involve banned testosterone or other steroids.
What's because
So
of the
many of our
Russians used it.
athletes that
The Russians.
they're
The
they're
Russian
they're they're using
stimulation.
right they're using e-stim to increase the human performance. Now, in the last decade, really, but probably the last 2 decades, various scientists have also begun using e-stim as rehabilitation for a variety of clinical scenarios.
Mhm.
And probably the first group that was using this were folks in the traumatic paralysis group were using functional electrical stim to maintain muscles and bones and improve quality of life for those folks. They're still not walking, but maintaining muscles health had a huge impact on those individuals. Now, in addition, some folks are using e-stim as part of a rehabilitation to grow more muscles, better coordination, post-stroke, cerebral palsy, rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis. I've studied with MS, and of course, traumatic brain injury, and just traumatic injury in general. So e-stim is certainly a known technique that clinicians have been using for a long time to facilitate rehabilitation. What I've brought to the table is to say, and we should have a rehabilitation goal for MS patients, that we treat them medically using the Wahls protocol to stop the inflammation, stop the degeneration, stop the progressive damage. At the same time, we want to rehabilitate their muscle strength with an exercise program. And if you can access it, electrical stimulation of muscles to help augment that exercise. Not to replace, but to augment.
Got it. Cool. Well, so Terry, have you also tried vibration platforms? Have you been doing pretty good?
Oh yeah, I do that too. So
Yeah.
I keep reading the literature. I do a variety of interesting things, and I talk about that in my book. So pulse electromagnetic fields. I've gone down that route.
Cool.
And certainly the vibration platforms. And it was the same researcher that was studying the e-stim and the paralyzed vets. He studies the vibration platforms as well.
Gotcha.
So I go check in with my colleagues, see what they're up to, and then I go check it out, get the device, and see how it works out for me.
Yeah, we have three power plates in our office, Terry. So
that's great.
We have, it's like, I think we have like the Pro 6 power plates, and all of our patients jump on those. We do neck band exercises, we do mirror image, postural changes. So we retrain muscles and nerves and balance coordination. That's what we use it for. Proprioception. I mean, it's amazing. The first day when our patients come in for an exam, we do single leg standing tests, cross their arm, close their eyes. And most of them can really only hold for maybe like 8 to 10 seconds before they fall over. But after we do a re-exam, they're holding their legs up for about 30 seconds before they even topple over, before we even tell them to stop. We're just like, we're counting, like, okay, they're good. Because almost every single time their cerebellum proprioception has kicked into high gear after just, a
a few times of therapy, and it's amazing the results we see. So power plates and vibration platforms in general are just amazing. We use them every single day. So that's really cool that you've been using
Well,
this.
I've been trying to see if I could get a speaker who could come talk about the use of vibration platforms for our seminar. So we'll have to.
Okay.
Yeah, every year I put out a call for people to pitch talks at the Wahls Protocol seminar.
Yeah, we can totally talk about it.
Yeah, it'd be that would be a very relevant topic.
Okay. No, I'd love to, Tara. That'd be amazing. Now, let's get back on to organ meats, because I think the last time I had an organ, so it was liver. I think it was 2016, and I cooked it myself. First time ever doing it. I had no guidance really. I mean, kind
brave
of.
Man.
I know, very brave, very brave. I was looking online for like recipes, right? And like, it's not just the recipe, it's how you cook it, I'm sure, right? So when I cooked it, I think I just overcooked it to the point where I couldn't taste the blood and the iron, because when I tasted it, it's like, oh my gosh, it just feels like there's like, my mouth is full of blood. How do you make liver taste better?
Oh, it's
That's
delicious. My kids actually like liver and onions a great deal. We love liver pate. When they want to have a special meal for friends, they'll make bacon wrapped chicken livers or
Nice.
bacon wrapped lamb liver, which is really quite lovely. One of the key things is to not overcook your liver.
Okay.
You leave your liver rare to medium rare,
Okay.
and it will be much tastier. So I'll fry up some onions, take them out of the skillet. Then lamb is my current favorite, although any of the other livers are fine. I'll put them in the skillet, watch them carefully, brown them slightly on one side, then flip on the other side with a low temperature, take them out, try to be very careful to not get them well done. If they're well done, they'll just be terrible.
Okay.
I'm very happy with meat rare, so I'm happy with it rare, but medium rare would also work. You want it pink, a little pink on the inside, and that's very tasty. And then if you have some liver and onions left, you put it back in the food processor with olive oil, and blend it all up to make a liver pate. Okay. And if you have fermented black garlic, add that in there as well, blend that all up. That liver pate, you put on raw vegetables, a little guacamole, and either put some hot ginger sauce or hot sauce on top of that. Delicious. My kids consider both of those dishes to be very yummy food that they like serving their friends.
Oh, it sounds amazing. Well, I'm going to have to do it that way then.
Yeah, and if you make the pate, with guacamole and the little pate and hot sauce, you don't tell people what you're serving them.
Exactly. Very, very good.
And if you do a little piece of lamb liver wrapped in bacon, and you put it in the grill, you want the bacon done, but you don't want it crisp because you don't want the liver to be overdone.
Okay, got it.
That's also very yummy.
Now, tasty
Again,
food is...
you never tell people what you're serving until after they've consumed it.
Very good. It's very smart.
Yeah.
So all tastiness and tips aside, why must people be eating liver? I know it's obviously good for glutathione, right? So
it's great for glutathione, but it's also a great source. You want grass-fed organic animals,
okay,
and so it's going to be a good source of your B vitamins, water-soluble vitamins. There won't be a lot of vitamin C in it unless you eat it completely raw. Even then, still won't be that much vitamin C. But great sources of all the B vitamins. Good source of vitamin A. Good source of vitamin K, and it'll also have some vitamin D in it.
Okay.
Now, vitamin A, there's a lot of variation in the efficiency of converting beta carotene to retinol or vitamin A. And depending on the SNPs in your genetic variation, my efficiency at conversion might have a 70 to 80% decrease compared to the wild type.
Right. And
if I don't have enough retinol, I'm more likely to have problems with my eyes, of course, problems with my cell differentiation, so cancer, pre-malignancy, and problem with immune cell function, so autoimmunity. So I tell my folks who have any kind of retinal visual problems or problems with an autoimmune problem, or a pre-cancer cancer or dysplastic growth, they likely have a retinol problem and they need to have liver once or twice a week.
Interesting. That's really interesting. Now, Tara, have you had your genes tested? Have you
Yes.
done 23andMe?
Oh yeah.
Now I got a question about that since we're on this. So I know that 23andMe, they give you raw data and you can send it off to other websites. Have you done that yourself?
Yeah, I have.
What do you typically, where do you like to go through? I know there's multiple different ones. Or what have you gone through at least?
Genetic Genie.
Strategene. Have you used Strategene?
No.
That's Dr. Ben Lynch's site, I believe that he did. And then there's DNA Fit. Those were the two I was looking at. But
no, I've not used either of those. So it'd be interesting to check out. And the other thing I want to point out to folks is the amount of variation that we have with our SNPs is so large. And the reality is we don't have big enough data sets to really understand what the implications of the genetic information is. So you have the genes. It may be more useful to have some of these really big data metabolites to really understand how the genes are affecting how I can run the chemistry of life. And then the third thing that confuses all of this is, so you and I have about 25,000 genes in our microbiome. If we have a healthy, robust microbiome, I have 5 to 9 million genes. Which genes are probably running most of my biochemistry? My 25,000 or the 5 to 9 million? And the answer is, we don't really know.
Right.
We spend a lot of time thinking about our 25,000. I don't think we spend nearly enough time thinking about the 5 to 9 million.
Right.
It's my simplistic way of thinking that it's the 5 to 9 million that are very responsive to the environmental changes. And since we changed our environment so radically, we screwed up those 5 to 9 million genes. Right. That's why we have poor health. It's not, that probably has very little to do with the SNPs that I've got, that are variations. Because my ancestors would not have had reproductive success. The problem is that I quit eating 200 different plants. I quit being outside. I quit being barefoot.
We eat the same vegetables all the time. Even when we think we're eating healthy, we're eating the same vegetables. There's only a certain amount of vegetables in the store.
Correct. You really have to, I really have to work at it to get to 200 different plants in a year.
Right.
I have to pay attention to this.
Will you grow your own, Terry?
Yes. I'm sure, yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
Okay. You probably have some pretty unique vegetables in your garden then, I'm sure, right?
Well, I have many different kinds of greens.
Okay.
We have many different kinds of berries. We have a variety of fruit trees. And I have lots of different herbs.
Okay.
And then I have a variety of squashes.
Nice.
And so those are the kinds of things that I grow. We've added some mushroom spawn. Periodically, I throw mushroom spawn in there as well. That's a pretty fun thing to grow.
Nice.
You periodically have to re-inoculate to get the mushrooms to come back.
Oh, interesting.
But that's very fun.
Okay. So kind of talking about vegetables. So you were a vegetarian for 20 years, right? And so you, even as a vegetarian, you saw yourself kind of going downhill. Why do you think that is? I mean, not to knock on vegetarianism, but I'm just curious.
So it's certainly possible to be vegetarian and maintain health.
Okay.
But it's also possible to be a paleo eater and still wreck your health.
Exactly.
The vegetarians, if you have gluten sensitivity, and you're eating gluten, which I have, that was a big part of my problem. And so that lack of awareness that gluten was a risk factor. Eggs, I also am severely intolerant to, and dairy. So my interpretation of a vegetarian diet was very, very destructive. In my book, I do recognize that there are certainly a large number of people worldwide who are committed to vegetarian diets for religious reasons. And so for them, I teach them how to get sufficient protein, avoid the most serious food sensitivities, and still have a nutritionally sound diet. So it's certainly possible. And in my clinics, for people living on food stamps, having more meatless days done in a healthy way lets them implement the Wahls protocol while living on food stamps.
Wow, nice.
So I try to be very practical because, for 20 years, the people I saw at the VA are living on food stamps, many of them, and
Nice.
they have very limited resources. So when people tell me that you can't do the Wahls protocol if you aren't, a upper middle class person, I go like, no. I took care of folks very successfully living on food stamps, teach them how to do this, the diet and lifestyle, living on a very limited income. It's certainly possible. You do have to learn how to cook. Yes, you got to learn how to cook.
Cool. Now, would you suggest, Terry, to probably have someone get lab testing done, specifically for at least food allergies?
No,
or
I do not.
No.
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. So, and it's sort of interesting. As I'm learning all this functional medicine, my clinical practice is entirely in the VA. And the VA, the first probably 3 years that I was doing functional medicine, I could do, I was in the traumatic brain injury clinic. I got to do no labs, saw people twice a year. Had phenomenal results. I got 20 minutes twice a year. I could change people's lives.
That's awesome.
20 minutes twice a year. All I had was inspiration, education, and human connection. And we did very well. In primary care, I could get some basic primary care labs, like lipid, glucose, A1Cs, and again, 20 minutes twice a year, human connection, education, inspiration, few very basic labs, amazing results. Then my VA chief of medicine and chief of staff said, we want to take you out of primary care. We want to take you out of the traumatic brain injury clinic. We want you to run a clinic just for how you want to practice. And we called it the Therapeutic Lifestyle Clinic.
Nice.
And so now I got to do a few more labs. I got to do an insulin and a homocysteine.
Okay, nice.
And a vitamin D level.
So for the homocysteine, you were just looking for methylation?
Just methylation. And so, again, I'm doing very basic labs that we did at the VA, no fancy functional medicine send-outs. And this is all in terms of the history of the exam, the connection. I had such demand. I was doing this all through group classes.
Nice.
And we did, again, very well. So from my point of view, the beauty of having to practice that way for 10 years is I realized it was actually quite liberating because I had to tell people, look, if you want to work with me, here's the diet you're going to have to follow. And if you're not ready, that's fine. You can go work with a dietitian and they'll help you tune up your diet. You come back when you're ready to follow this diet.
Nice.
And we'll have some very basic labs that we will monitor your progress. And so there was no argument over, I think you have food sensitivity, we have to do food sensitivity tests. It's like, here's the diet. When you're ready, come back. When you're not, if you're not ready, that's fine. Just go see your primary care doc and ask for a referral back when you do want to do this. And, people would wait 6 months to get to see me. So if I said, here's the diet, here's the ticket.
Then they were going to do it.
You have to punch. They were happy to punch that ticket because they'd already waited a long time to get in. That's
super cool. And I'm sure, like you said, it was probably pretty liberating when you first started with everything, everyone was kind of pushing you back and it's like, that can't be it. But then eventually it's like, maybe Terry's onto something here. And then they let you do what you got to do,
Correct. And what happened was my clinical success. And then at the same time, we were doing our research and the research was so striking. The videos of the gait changes at baseline in 12 months were so striking as I went around to various departments showing, presenting our research and the videos. It's like, wow, she's onto something. Then our paper started getting published. And then the other thing that's striking is the university was getting phone calls from philanthropists saying, we want to make a donation to the Wahls Research Fund.
Wow, nice. That's awesome.
And so that allowed us to do several more pilot studies that we could keep generating, remarkable positive data.
That's really cool.
Eventually, let me write some very successful grants. So we now have much larger studies going on.
Now, before I forget asking this question, you're working with some multiple sclerosis foundation societies right now. Is
Right.
that correct?
So the National Multiple Sclerosis Society
Okay.
is made a research priority after my book came out, and they realized their constituents really wanted them to answer the question, does diet matter? So they put out a call asking for dietary studies and funded us. So we've got over $1 million. It's a 4-year
Wow.
study.
Nice.
We'll be recruiting people through April of this spring. You have to have relapse remitting MS, fatigue, and live within 500 miles of Iowa City.
Okay.
People come in, we do the baseline assessments, have them eat their usual diet for 12 weeks. Then we randomize them to either the low saturated fat diet or the Wahls diet. Train them on the diet, bring them back in 12 weeks, do all the clinical assessments again, bring them back in another 12 weeks. So it's a 36-week time period and 4 visits. We should be done with all of our study visits at the very end of December. And then in 2020, we'll be analyzing our results and presenting them around the country. It'll be cool.
I bet you can't wait. That's going to be
It'll
fun.
be very exciting.
So I kind of want to switch gears here. You were talking about saturated fats. I know that's a big thing. Everyone talks about how saturated fats is so bad for you, all that kind of stuff. Why do you think that meat today gets such a bad rep? Because in my personal opinion, I think it's really the conventional meat, the meat that you find in factory farms, that they're doing these research studies on, that meats that's absolutely garbage. They're not testing organic pasture raised meat.
Right. It's a different product.
Yeah.
You know, these animals are consuming foods that they're not meant to consume.
Mm-hmm.
They're raised in stressful environments. So yes, it's a very different product. And then the other thing that we have to keep in mind is, as we're trying to digest this different product, we have a different microbiome that's helping us do that digestion. Yeah. And so if we're eating a grain-based diet with grains grown with a lot of glyphosate in them, that's further damaged our microbiome.
Yeah.
Now we have a very different set of genes that are helping run the chemistry of that digestion and all those metabolites.
Right.
And so, so those research studies with TMO and being concerning that here's a reason my vegetarian friends say you should not eat meat. And I'm like, well, maybe. It could also be a reason that our current microbiome has become so unhealthy that foods that used to be healthy for us are not. Right. Or it could mean that the meat that we're eating has been so changed, as you said, by the animal husbandry. So there are a lot of questions to tease out. I'm very simplistic in my thinking, in that over the millions of generations, our ancestral mothers and fathers have been eating insects, reptiles, amphibians, mammals for a long time. Yeah. And if those meats were bad for us, we would not have had reproductive success.
Right.
So, and we're well equipped to eat a wide variety of foods, plants, meat. We don't do well plants alone. That becomes a much more complicated circumstance. Mm-hmm. And we can fast for a while. We can do that. So we're quite resourceful. But we've radically changed what we eat now.
Right.
And so there's some big health consequences. And I'm looking more towards how has our food changed? How has our microbiome changed? And how could I get my microbiome, my food, and my environment to look a little more closely to what my ancestral mothers and fathers would have seen?
Right. Yeah. Sometimes simplistic things are much better. And I'm glad you said that about what the animals are eating, because we know that a lot of people are sensitive to lectins, and that's what all the animals are eating. That's what we're feeding them. We're giving them corn, grains. And so I think people are having reactions to that. I mean,
I think that's, and we'll take it one step further. What is the health of our soil?
Right.
Franklin Roosevelt talked a lot about how important it was to protect the health of the soil, because the soil is the future of the country. And we've changed again our agricultural practices in an effort to boost calorie production, thinking that would end world hunger. And so we changed farming practices, used a lot of chemical fertilizer, a lot of herbicides to increase per acre production, not nutrient per acre production, just calorie per acre production.
Yeah.
And with that, we also greatly diminished the diversity of the soil microbiome.
Right.
And it's the diversity of the soil microbiome that helps the plants absorb the minerals.
Absolutely. Now, Terry, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you this question, because I know you're a huge proponent on sulfur-rich foods and
Yes.
and vegetables with a lot of color. Now, can you kind of touch on those and why we need those?
So the three big categories: lots of greens. We're very short on our vitamin K2, short on our carotenoids. Greens really ramp that up. I'm stoked about the sulfur-rich cabbage family, onion family, mushroom family. And we need sulfur to detoxify our compounds. We also need sulfur to make glutathione, intracellular antioxidants, and sulfur for a lot of neurotransmitters.
Right.
And the third category, deeply pigmented, is very polyphenol rich. And numerous studies have shown that the more color we have, the lower the rates of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, autoimmunity, and mental health problems. And several studies looking at short-term interventions, just 1 cup a day of blueberries has measurable improvements in thinking.
Really?
Early cognitive decline. You can see it in 16 weeks and 24 weeks.
Wow.
1 cup of blueberries. Like, oh my God, how easy is that? So,
well, and then
so
also there's like different benefits for different colors, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So it's 9 cups of fruits and vegetables, 3 cups of greens, 3 cups of sulfur-rich, 3 cups of deeply colored, and preferably 3 different colors.
Okay, cool. And then the other question I have also, Terry, is that what is the difference between raw and cooked vegetables? Because I typically I'll put all my vegetables in a steamer. I find, for me personally, I just feel like when I steam it, it's easier on my digestion.
Yes.
So what are there certain vegetables you should and shouldn't steam? Like I think you're supposed to cook spinach, really.
It depends on the person,
Okay.
in your issues. So I have people do the straight up microbiome test. You poop, you take a look.
Right.
Is it rock, log, snake, pudding, or tea?
Yeah.
If it's pudding or tea, you have to cook your vegetables and stop the fruit.
Okay.
If it's a snake, you get a gold star. If it's a log that's easily passed, that's sort of a silver star. If it's rocks, you need more raw vegetables, and you may need some additional fiber like larch, chia seed, green banana flour.
Huh. Okay. Wow. That's I actually didn't think about it. Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny, Terry, is that a lot of people don't actually look down at their stool.
No, we're embarrassed.
Yeah. And then when people talk about it, they don't want to talk about it. It's like, that is your health in the toilet bowl. Like whatever you poop out, it's like almost your health.
Absolutely. When I was a intern in medical school, our elderly patients would tell us that if they knew they could feel better, if they could just have a good bowel movement. And we would laugh and make fun of them. Yeah. And of course, and now I tell the medical students, I feel so bad because my seniors were so wise. They were so correct. That's all about the microbiome.
Huh. That's really funny. Wow. Yeah. Well, I actually did a little bit on your stool and the color and consistency. And it was really funny, the reaction. Everyone's like, oh, I didn't know that. And then I had people messaging me either on Instagram or on Facebook. And they're like, hey, man, just want to let you know, I look down at my poop and it's all good. Or then some people tell me, hey, man, my poop's not looking too good. What should I do? And I thought that was really funny. But, people should pay attention. Yeah.
We've got to pay attention to that. So in clinics, we practice giving each other advice on how to deal with rocks, logs, snakes, pudding, tea.
That's amazing. Yeah. I like that. Now, I'm going to kind of switch gears here on you, Terry. So I know that with multiple sclerosis, you really need to work when you get to the point, if you have it where it's debilitating, you need to work up to it. But obviously, you need some balance exercises, proprioception. We touched on the vibration platform. What were the kind of things you were doing exercise-wise then, and then what are you doing now? How have you kind of progressed? What are like the things that you've kind of picked up?
So when I started, I was so weak. All I could do was I'd lay on my back and reach up towards my knees.
Wow.
That was my exercise.
Wow. So a stretch.
Yeah. Okay. And I progressed. I progressed.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had some very basic pull exercises I did in addition to that. I stand on one leg, brush my teeth with a non-dominant hand.
Nice.
And while I'm brushing my teeth, I do hip hikes on the other leg. And then after I've done that on both legs, while I'm still brushing my teeth with my non-dominant hand, I close my eyes.
Nice.
Standing on one leg. And I have my back to the corner so that, because when I close my eyes, this is tough. And I began to falter. It's open my eyes, get set again, and then I close. So I'm doing better so I can stand longer with my eyes closed. And what I tell people is, you want something that's a little bit hard. When it gets easy, then you have to do something that's a little bit hard again.
Right. Right.
And if you can't do it, it's too hard, then you have to back off. You want something just a little bit challenging.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that's super cool. Have you noticed that your non-dominant hand has actually gotten a lot better? How long have you been brushing your teeth? Is it almost like your right hand? Not quite, but
no, not quite. And my left side is weaker. My original training is an artist. I have a BFA in painting.
Oh, nice.
So I as part of my drawing skills, I drew with my right hand, drew with my left hand, drew with my right foot, drew with my left foot. And it's some of the very interesting drawing exercises that our professors would have us do.
That is very interesting. I think personally, when we are kids, we should be taught to do things on both sides. I don't know why we're not taught that. It doesn't make any sense to me, but I think you should be taught that, the cross crawl stuff that we learned when we were kids.
And what you learn is my professor told me is you draw much more accurately with your non-dominant hand.
Really? Did not know that.
And you'll draw more accurately with your feet.
Wow.
Because if you draw with your dominant hand, you draw what you think you're seeing as opposed to what you're actually seeing.
Very interesting.
It's all about learning how to look and how to see.
Huh. Wow. Well, I was brushing my teeth with my non-dominant hand for a little while there, and then I got lazy. So I will admit that.
And then start doing it with standing on one leg, then start doing other exercises.
Right.
So you keep advancing the challenge while you're brushing with your non-hand.
Yeah, I got to pick that back up. So Terry, other than your the research that you discussed earlier, are there anything else you're working on right now?
So I have a seminar that I run for the public every summer.
Okay.
And we are also doing a health professional training certification. So we have that's part of the live event, and I have that as an online training, and that's been going very, very well. Then the other thing I'm doing is I'm faculty for the Institute for Functional Medicine, and I've been doing some teaching now for the American Anti-Aging Medicine. Restorative medicine.
That was just this past month, right? Or yeah. How was that?
That was very good. That's a big. These are big meetings now. Thousands of clinicians. Very, very exciting to see.
That's super cool. Now, Terry, I've asked you a bunch of questions, but is there any other thing that you do in your daily life that's out of the ordinary, maybe kind of like esoteric in a way where, I hate to use the word biohacking all the time, but are there other things that you do?
Cold showers. So I do cold showers.
Nice.
I still do e-stim. I do that as part of my training. Swimming, saunas, meditation, mindfulness, visualization for, the big, hairy, audacious goals that I have.
Right.
And then I write grants, write books, working on PowerPoints for next lecture.
Nice.
Taking my dog for a walk.
That's the best right there. What kind of dogs you got? You just have one dog? You just have one dog?
One dog.
Okay. Oh, cool.
Watching my kids, move on in their life. It's a lot of fun for parents to watch your children go from adolescence to young adulthood. And now, they're 24 and 27. And actually, now I'm getting sort of wise again. I actually ask my opinion out now and then.
That's great.
Sort of fun. But be very careful. I try very hard to refrain from giving an opinion until
Right.
asked. Yeah.
Right. Now, Terry, I have three final questions that I ask at
Okay.
at the end of every show. And the first one is, if the world was ending today and you could eat anything for your last meal, what would it be?
Liver and onions.
Every
Lamb
day,
liver
huh?
and onions, yeah. And then I'd have parsley onion salad. And then I would have my some blackberries or blueberries on the side.
Nice. Awesome. Now, second question, Terry. If you had one last week to live, you are in perfect health, and you could travel anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Well, as long as I'm with Jackie, that would be the key thing. It would be lovely to go back to Nepal and go hike back up to the Langtang Peak. I had at one time envisioned that I'd be taking my kids mountain climbing. So if I, was strong enough that I could take them mountain climbing again, that would be pretty cool.
Well, it sounds like the trip is coming up soon then.
I need to start adding that to my visualization.
Well, what, I mean, what?
Because my two kids have said that they've added mountain climbing into their goals, and Zeb's has this sort of scheduled in the next 18 months that she's got a summit she plans to climb. So.
Well, sounds like you guys got to start planning a trip.
I guess I better start.
I planted it in your mind, Terry.
Yep, I'll start visualizing that.
All right. So last question, Terry. If you had one piece of advice for anyone out there listening to live a better life, what would it be?
Know your purpose. If you have great clarity as to what is it that is your mission in life, and how you can have a meaningful life giving back using your unique strengths to your tribe, your community, I think you'll find that immensely satisfying and empowers you to do whatever else you want to do in your life.
Amazing. I love it. Well, Dr. Wahls, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I had an absolute blast. Where can listeners go to connect with you or hear more about you? Is there anywhere you'd like them to go?
So they should go off to Terry Wahls, Terry Wahls, WAHLS.com/diet, because that way they'll get a lovely one-page handout summary of the Wahls diet concepts.
Perfect. And I'll put that in the show notes so that everybody can get those. So,
great.
Dr. Wahls, thanks so much. It was an absolute pleasure, and looking forward to talking to you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks much.
Hey. One last thing before you head out. As I said earlier, if you listen to this podcast regularly, it's most likely because you're a badass who wants to be better at everything in your life. This is because you hate to be average. You don't want to be like anyone else. You want to be strong, smart, live healthy into old age, crush your competitors, create amazing relationships, and live life beyond limits. Well, as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, you can finally unleash your life by getting your free copy of The Unleashed Human by going to www.theunleashedhuman.com/unleashed. Again, that's www.theunleashedhuman.com/unleashed to get a copy of my free book so that you can stop living average and start living unleashed. Talk to you guys on the next episode. I promise you are not going to want to miss the next episode. Love you guys for all the amazing support. Take care, and do me a favor. Go out there and become unleashed.